And through my research, I found that essentially Martin Luther King Jr. was never a disciple of Jesus Christ. All that's been buried. Mm-hmm. Martin Luther King Jr. became a hero to the masses in America. The reason we have Martin Luther King Day, the reason we have Martin Luther King statue there in D.C. is not about civil rights. It's been covered over and made to look that way. The real reason we have a Martin Luther King Jr. Day is because he fully adopted the weapons, the ideology, everything of the liberal left.
Believe the lie, so everything that I know says I gotta go, tired of going solo, but I'm never gonna go there again. This is what it is, this is who I am, this is where I finally take my stand. I didn't wanna fall, but I don't have to grow. I'm not the one with two scarred hands, giving him the best of everything that's left of the life inside this man. I've been born again.
Yes, we are back. Eddie Huff with you on a Saturday afternoon, evening, morning, midnight. At some point, whenever you see this, that's when we're on. We're recording actually right around noonish on Saturday.
Yeah.
It's supposed to snow and freeze in Tulsa, Oklahoma, T-Town, as some people would like to call it. This is Eddie Huff. I'm with my kick in the side, Dave Van Risingham, and a guest for the weekend who we will introduce a little later. Anyway, we're glad to be back with you. Dave, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. You have a good week?
I've had a great week.
Wonderful.
It's been a beautiful week.
Beautiful week. Oh,
we're going to pay for it next week, I think, beginning tonight.
Yeah, actually, without further ado, this is my friend Barry Johnson, married to Kay Johnson, and they've been vaccinated with the Johnson vaccine.
Yeah.
Johnson and Johnson.
Hey.
Johnson and Johnson. Oh, another Johnson.
Yeah, that's right.
Johnson and Johnson.
Yeah.
I guess I'm the only party pooper here that I still have not gotten the jab.
Right.
I've only had COVID about 3 or 4 times, but so I'm one of these guys. You know how a snake, if a snake bites you, the snake venom actually ends up as an anti-venom. Yeah. So that's kind of how just bring it on. Omicron, Delta, Sigma, Phi, Pi,
That's right.
Upsilon, Zeta.
Yeah,
Bite me.
Exactly. You live too sterile of a life, you get weak, and then something will kill you.
Yeah.
It's George Carlin has this great video. We don't dare play it because, it's George Carlin language. But he says, look, we swam in the Hudson Rivers, kids. None of us got polio.
Yeah.
We swam in sewage.
Did you ever make mud pies?
Oh, yeah.
And actually eat them? Did you make mud pies when you were a kid?
Well, only if we ate them.
Yeah, I actually ate mud pies. I hated every second of it. But you got to show your boyhood. It couldn't be manhood yet; it's boyhood. But no, we had a good time. In any event, I do want to introduce my friend Barry Johnson. Barry and Kay, his wife. We have a long history. Back in the YWAM days, we were in Youth with a Mission together. They were these young 17, 18-year-old kids that had just come over after high school to work with YWAM. And Kay, what YWAM would do, they would do these community houses. And my wife and I had 2 single girls with us, his wife, and then the other one was actually probably about 10 years. I guess Marge was about 10 years older, I'd say.
I try not to guess a woman's age.
All right.
Just ask them what they weigh.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah,
He's been hanging out with you, Eddie.
Yeah. but anyway, they were in our house with us, and then they fell in love. They were on the street teams. They worked on the streets of Amsterdam and used to do. Toy Maker's Dream, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the original was called Toy Maker and Son.
I remember
Colin
that.
Harbison through YWAM. And YWAM did this thing on the streets all over Europe, Asia. And Barry and Kay, you were the Cruel Teds, weren't you?
Yes, we were.
I don't know if anybody knows anything about Toy Maker. They were these little evil bear-looking dolls.
It never quite made sense the way it was we described it, because we were dressed up as cute little teddy bears.
Teddy bears that were evil.
Leather jackets and
Okay, on behalf of the 3 of us in Tulsa who want to know the answer, why? Because I saw Toy Maker and Son, Victor Christensen did it, and then later it was pitched as Toy Maker's Dream. Why the rebranding?
Oh, because Toymaker and Son was copyrighted by the original
Yeah.
founder, Colin Harbinson.
Yeah.
And that's the YWAM version. And then I won't mention the name of the person here who took it over and made it into Toymaker's Dream.
Yeah.
And made it in this big stage production,
Yeah.
which was good. I mean, it was very
Yeah.
good. I actually, even when I did tours, we actually brought Toymaker's Dream to Germany and
Yeah.
Austria and a couple other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So so that's the long and short of how that goes. But anyway, Barry and Kay, like I said, they got married there in Amsterdam as young kids, and then
Mm-hmm.
I think you took part in the wedding ceremony somehow.
I think I did. I don't remember.
We hired you as the guy to stand up and go, I object to these.
Yeah,
two
so if
together."
there anyone to object to this marriage union between it's me,
Yeah.
he's
Barry.
a dirtbag, he's a dog. No.
Barry, come on into the microphone a little bit.
Oh yeah.
There we go.
Thank you. But no, we had a good time, and they continued on street. And then I was the actual administrative head of Musicians for Missions, and then Barry and Kay came and joined
Nice.
MFM, and he with Karen Lafferty, and then we went to Germany, and they stayed for a while in Amsterdam and came back, and the rest is history. They have 2 kids, we have 4, and but our YWAM memories, Amsterdam. I mean, really, when we think back, those are some of the best days of our lives. Am I wrong?
Do I have to answer that on the air?
It took too long for you to answer, Aubrey. You already
did.
answered. If you can't answer that immediately,
Yeah.
there- yeah.
Let's just move on to the next segment of the show here.
You know,
No, it was
there
all
was a
good.
guy that was with the Philippe Mermot.
Oh, yeah, Philippe.
Philippe, and I'm sorry, Philippe Bogdan. Philippe Bogdan. Mermot was another guy from Switzerland. But so Philippe Mermot was a French kid that also lived, he lived in this other house after they got married. We lived in this giant house with 21 people. You
Yeah.
believe it was community.
What is it about YWAM that gets these palaces, you know? I mean, they really do.
Don't get him started. He'll start telling you about all of these rich places. But anyway, we moved into this other place with all of these people. But it was like Philippe Bogdan was a French kid.
Yeah.
And he was from Metz, France. Anyway, and so Philippe, when he got married, they got married in Switzerland. Did you go down to Switzerland to his wedding?
We went to Switzerland for somebody's wedding.
It must have been
Yes, it was
Philippe.
Philippe's.
Yeah, and I remember afterwards, Philippe coming to me with almost tears in his eyes. He just said, "Thank you for those 2 years we had together in that house in Holland." It was out near Haarlem,
Yeah.
near the North Sea.
Yeah.
And he said, "Those were the most 2 wonderful years of my life." And what's weird about that is that Philippe and I argue like cats and dogs. Now I never argue with anybody, right? You guys both know I'm the most passive,
Oh, God.
most
Here
agreeable
it comes.
person.
Yeah.
And but anyway, so Philippe. But in the midst of all of that, how he and I would be at odds over many things. He was a great musician. He was a keyboard player.
Yeah.
And very genius. He had a mind for what made good music. He was a huge Toto fan. He introduced me to a lot of really great music, but he really knew his synthesizers, that Korgs versus Junos and all of these keyboards and things. But he's passed away now. He ended up, sadly, he had bipolar disease, and it got worse and worse, ruined his marriage, and then he passed away. But I'll never forget him. But anyway, Barry, Kay, Vicky, and I, and so many others that were over there in YWAM Amsterdam, we really had a wonderful time ministering. They, like I said, they did the street teams. They had a coffee bar. Urban Missions was the overall name of the ministry, and we worked. Where our building was, it was right across from the train station and all of these canals where the people would take these nice little tour boats. But on one side of our building was the drug addicts.
Yeah.
And in fact, you'd have to step over.
Holland doesn't have drugs, I hear.
You'd have to step over people puking on our door, and then on the other side went down to the red light district.
Oh, yeah.
They moved the drugs, and Barry told me, I think, was it you or okay? They told me they moved the red light district farther back.
They did. It felt like it was kind of consolidated, but definitely pushed back a couple of streets because the red light district in Amsterdam has always been, at least while we were there, was in the most beautiful part of the city.
That's true. The canal. Yeah, you'll ride these canal boats with the glass over
the
in
old
the
part of the city, the most beautiful part.
Yeah.
And so I think somebody in government finally kind of wised up and was like, "Hey, take a better
sounds more like
advantage."
somebody in business that convinced the people in government.
If I wanted to kill libertarianism in the United States, all I'd have to do is show pictures of Metro Amsterdam and say, this is what the red light district and the, legalized all drugs does to you.
Well, but you have to pick a certain time of day.
Yeah.
Because if you go through there during the
tell
day,
us, Eddie. You know these things.
Yeah. I used to have to walk my children, my 4-year-old to 10-year-old kids. We would walk all the community kids through the red light district to go to school.
Oh, yeah.
And then you got these prostitutes passed out in the windows in their underwear. They're laying there.
Oh, God.
Yeah. And then you got all these little bitty 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old kids.
Wow.
And every now and then one of them look up, oh, look at her. What's wrong with her? It was some crazy, crazy stuff. And do you remember the person, there was a guy who used to walk around in a spacesuit?
Yeah, Jupiter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Had like a full bubble like helmet and this white spacesuit, and it was just like it was nothing to see here.
Okay, so as the only person at this table who was never involved directly with YWAM, I want to say this. The innovations of YWAM as a world missions organization is phenomenal.
The world's largest missions organization that no one's ever heard of.
Yeah, well, because you think of, Grandma's Church and the missions fund and the traditional mission that every fourth year comes home on, for furlough, yeah, and stuff. And then they're going there and then they give you the reports. And you wonder, okay, I'm not saying they don't reach people, but I'm saying there's a segment of culture globally that YWAM is tooled up for in ways that the traditional missions isn't.
Yeah, it's so different. I remember in my first 6 months, they used to have the Christian Artists Festival, and there was one in Colorado.
Yeah, Estes Park.
Estes Park, exactly.
Yeah, my brother always goes.
They had a Christian Artists Europe, which was outside of Amsterdam, way out there, out in the Veluwe. And so we would go to this. And it's so funny. So we're out there and we met this other missions couple with another mission. And so, my wife and I, we never solicited money. We just told people we were there, and if they wanted to give, they could give whatever. But we never, so we're at dinner with this couple, and I said, so you guys doing all right? And they said, yeah, we live in this and this, and we're driving this. And I said, whoa, that's interesting. They were in Germany. And they said, yeah, our mission organization, we had to raise $3,000 a month. And I almost spit my food out on the table. We're getting like $300 a month if we're lucky. And they were bringing in $3,000 a month. I said, $3,000 a month? For what? He said, no, I'm sorry. You see, I'm even reacting.
Eddie's drop mic moment.
And for what? He said, oh, everything. I said, yeah, everything. Your child's future college education and everything. $3,000 a month, and we're living on.
That goes a long way in a socialist country.
Oh, are you kidding me? I mean, it was like unbelievable. And so, but we couldn't leave until we raised $3,000. We couldn't come over. And I actually had other friends that joined the same organization. They wanted to go to South America. They never got to go because they could never raise. They have to spend a whole year itinerary to get that before they.
Yeah, and then the denomination.
One last thing.
Yeah.
A retirement fund.
They
went to a retirement. Retirement? What are you're a Christian. Forget retirement. You're here. You're supposed to be here worrying about when these people retire from the earth that they go to heaven, and you're worrying about having a nice retirement. Oh, I was getting all exercised.
And that's the problem. Our friend David Fowler talks about the Constantine model of ministry. And you set up this career class of ministries, whereas Jesus said, "Y'all go into the whole world." Y'all.
So y'all have sinned. No, but I'm sorry. We'll get to that later. So I'm sorry to interrupt there.
Yeah, But this is the problem we have with it. And I remember Lester Sumrall coming to my Bible college. I studied pastoral ministry, and he said, we had just a revival breaking out in the Philippines. And his denomination's missions board said, God, we just can't pull the money off Wall Street right now. It's that the denomination gets to hang on to the purse.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's very difficult. Very, very difficult. So now, Barry, and another thing, here's another thing why I've learned. We've talked about this before. I think not judging. In fact, we might have.
Boy, I'm guilty of that. No.
We might have discussed Ernest Ainsley in one of our prior podcast.
Rings a bell.
Ernest Ainsley was an evangelist, this charismatic fellow.
Yeah.
And he spoke, he was a little bitty guy, and he spoke in a high voice, and he used to like to talk about people being addicted to cigarettes.
Oh, yeah.
And like he would say, Mother.
No, it wasn't just addicted to cigarettes, it was the nicotine.
The nicotine, yeah. Mother, do you smoke? Come out of your foul demon of nicotine. And I mean, that's exactly what he said. Yeah. And then the lady go flying across the stage.
Yeah.
And so one day, a few of us were making fun of Ernest. And then we find out that Barry got saved through watching Ernest on television. So I will never forget that. And there's a reason I will never forget it. It's because it caused me never to judge another man's sermon.
Hey, I got saved reading Jack Chick's little tracks.
Chick
yes,
tracks. Nice.
That's right.
Holy
Yeah,
Joe.
Not Tic Tacs, Chick Tracks.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
No.
And particularly, it was John Todd's Illuminati stuff, right? But I'm telling you, that got my attention. But it was the love of Jesus that drew me in.
Yeah.
God will use a lot of things, but there's no substitute for the love of God.
If you know what we're talking about, you know the Lord.
You're an old fogey.
You know the Lord. No, I'm serious. If you know Jack Chick, John Todd, if the name Alberto means anything to you, and Ernest Ainsley, you have been around, and our camera just ran out of battery.
All righty.
You go ahead. I'll keep talking if you want to go ahead and take care of that. Thank you. But anyway, getting back to the original discussion, I've been taking the long way around to introduce Barry Johnson and his wife. They've been friends of ours for years and years. They came back to America, and like I said, they were a bunch of kids. They were still teens when I met them, and then they came back here, and we've stayed in touch. And Barry, so tell me what's been going on. And you guys ended up in Florida, correct?
Yeah.
The free state of Florida.
That's exactly. That's right. Whoops.
That's all right. Don't worry about it.
DeSantis country. I went to school there, moved there when I was in high school. And then after graduation, that's when I decided to head overseas to
YWAM.
To Youth with a Mission. And that's where we met. Yeah. There we go.
Now, so I didn't know this until yesterday, that you actually lived in Tulsa as a child.
Oh, yeah. I was here, I want to say 5th and 6th grade and 7th grade. So it was like a couple of years of elementary school. And I cannot remember the name of the elementary school. If anybody out there remembers me from Tulsa.
Barry Johnson.
Let me know what that elementary school was. And then a year of middle school. So trying to find, I would love to go visit the house that we lived in at the time.
Oh, I bet.
I have no idea where it is.
That's always fun. I always made it a goal in my life to go back to my elementary school at Holloman Air Force Base. That's the most memorable one. I went from the 2nd through the 6th grade there.
So my brother was at Nathan Hale High.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, he went on to OU for a couple of years.
So that narrows it down, people, as to what grade school that Barry went to, because it's in the Hale area over there at Sheridan. And no, we had some good times in our mission days, and it's good to have Barry here. I'm hoping to get him saved any moment now.
Any minute. I'm real close.
Real close.
The more you talk, though, I feel like I'm further and further away. So.
Hey, now seriously,
that to me, Dave.
Seriously, people. On a serious note, we had a lot to discuss this week. I think, Dave, you have a Babylon Bee. You want to discuss the first one?
I've got a 2-part headline. Supreme Court sets a dangerous precedence of letting the American people make medical decisions for themselves. But part 2 of that is this. Supreme Court rules that healthcare workers are the only people who cannot make medical decisions for themselves. So
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Oh, I have to tell you,
Things that make you go,
did I do the Joel Osteen thing last week
I don't recall.
about the donkey? Okay. All right. No, I got it. A lot of people out there don't like Joel Osteen. Barry and I were having this discussion on the way over here. How people, again, Ernest Angley, different people. As Christians and conservatives are the worst in killing their own. As a friend, Bob Mumford used to say, and his friend quoted him, he was talking about, the Christian army is the only army on earth that when the wounded come back, we finish them off.
That's right.
And that's kind of true. But anyway, so Joel was talking, this was a couple of weeks ago, I happened to be listening during the Christmas break. And he was talking about people judging and being affected by the judgment of others. And he was talking about this old man. He was an older man. He had his grandson walking with him. And so the old man, they decided for the old man to ride the donkey. And so the old man's riding the donkey and the younger boy is walking. And they passed some people and they said, look at that. That's terrible. That young boy is making that. I'm sorry, the old man is making the young boy walk while he rides this donkey. That's terrible. So the old man gets off the donkey, puts the kid on the donkey, and they go a little further, and they pass some more people, say, look, that's a shame. Look at that young boy making that old man walk while he rides the donkey. He said, so they looked at you. Eventually what happened, they picked up the donkey and they carried the donkey into town.
Oh, God.
And so he says, people, it's time to put down the donkey.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, man, so much truth.
Absolutely.
In that. And so I'm saying to you and you today, if you are bothered by what people think about you, what people say about you, people, put down the donkey. Okay. It's just, it couldn't be in plainer. And of course, everybody at the church down there in Houston erupted with laughter. But it's true. There's so many people that are affected by what people think. Now, I don't know. I may contribute it to age. I think I used to be when I was younger. I kind of cared about, what are people going to think or what do people think? And then I think when I hit 50.
You don't give a darn.
I don't care anymore. I'd say that's why I am
That's
how I am.
liberating, isn't it?
It is. It is very liberating that I really don't care what you think about me.
It's also called selfishness, but we won't go there.
No, but see, it's to a certain sense,
It could.
Selfishness is not always wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because first of all, for one thing, who is going to heaven or hell?
The individual.
You, me, okay, you. It's not those people out there. So that's as individual as it gets. I'm going to die. I'm going to heaven or hell. I'm going to be judged. These are individual things. So why do I care about you? You may love me and I may still go to hell. You may hate me. I still go to heaven. Yeah. So we have to look at things in a more basic, just strip it all the way down to as you're born, as you die. Those are the two most lonely moments in the world. The moment that you first appear or conceived and appear, and then the moment that you go on.
Here's the height of hypocrisy in it, is when the individual says, because I don't like it, it must not be of God. Now, I'll say Sheila Walsh is an example. We talked about her last week. She was kind of groundbreaking in her kind of her 80s pop music that the Christian, record labels didn't have. And here I was, at a Bible college, and we just got this rec center, with the roller skating rink, and the old guy who's running it said, we are not playing that. That music's of the devil. He could have just said he didn't like that music style.
Yeah.
But it wasn't enough. He had to destroy her reputation in Christian Witness.
Yeah, isn't that terrible? Again, it gets back to where the Christian army destroys its own. We finish them off.
Eddie, I'll say this. I was never a Tammy Faye fan. Okay? And then I saw Jan Crouch, and I was at ORU downstairs in the lobby, and I said, oh my God, it's another Tammy Faye. And 3 or 4 of the girls, hey, don't you dare talk about her that way. I'm like, look, she just doesn't, her communication style doesn't click with me.
So all you had to say, I don't care for her style, or I don't care for
either way she communicates,
right.
Yeah.
It was like
and Joel Osteen's the same way.
It's the Ernest Angley, Joel Osteen, Elevation Church, Bethel, Mars Hill, all of these churches that people like to pick on.
Yeah.
By the way, I do have to say this. We do not meet beforehand to discuss what we're going to talk about. And Barry can say, Barry's sitting there, what have I got? We do not discuss. This is stuff that just comes as we speak.
We may lose Governor Stitt in our schedule coming up here because of this.
No. Yeah, he's a huge Tammy Faye fan, I'm sure. No, but no, you're right. And I'll tell you what, I had one of these moments back when I was doing music tours overseas. I became good friends with Idle Cure as I played their music. And so they were in the middle of recording something, and Dino Elefante, Elefante, John's brother, Dino Elefante, John and Dino had a studio there in the LA area. And so Mark Ambrose from Idle Cure took me with it to go talk to them. In fact, here's the funny thing. The Petra Praise album, the first Petra Praise album, they were recording. Petra happened to be there, and so they needed extra voices on this thing. So they came out, Eddie, hey, get in here.
Ooh.
And so there I am in there singing backup on Petra Praise. So on that Petra
How about that?
My name isn't mentioned, but it doesn't care. I don't care.
What about your retirement fund?
Yeah. No, but it was fun singing these worship songs that Petra was doing. But anyway, I remember sitting out in the lobby. And so I had just been watching TBN. Okay. And this, I'll tie all this together. But I remember I could not stand what I was watching on TBN. It just, it just went. And probably because I had been living in Europe for the last 10 years or more. Yeah. So they have to have Arsenio Hall comes on. And I remember thinking, man, what is wrong with me? I relate more with Arsenio's audience than I do this TBN audience. What and what is that? And so what's happened to all the people that are on this audience and I know that the answer is not Arsenio's audience. It's somewhere in between. Yeah. But it did show me that Christianity had gotten so far removed from reality, where the world actually lives, that they were no earthly good anymore. So it was like the salt had lost its flavor and the leaven was gone. It was one of those moments for me. But it really helped me in at that point in having more of a heart for those people who are watching Arsenio to try to bring them this way. But I think maybe I should have been concentrating more on bringing the TBN people to a more centered, real life, in the world experience.
Well, yeah, I don't, we're a multicultural church, right? I mean, church needs to transcend all cultures. We can't be going to the remote jungles of the Philippines and impose a European dress code on them. I don't think that's what the Great Commission is about. I mean, things are going to impact the way you live, reflects Christ, but those are principles. And too often, I think the church is seeing something outside of that local culture and said, well, that's not of God.
Right.
How many churches fight over the style of music in our worship services?
Very few.
It never happens.
I can't even think of a time.
And we call that the worship service when we're the most carnal.
Actually, speaking of the book.
Which book would that be?
Y'all Have Sinned.
Never heard of it.
It's this guy Eddie Huffman.
It wasn't written for me.
No, but anyway, I talk about in there how I don't know if you've ever heard the saying that the gospel hour or the church hour on Sunday morning is the most divided hour of the week. And I take issue with that.
Yeah.
Because, and what they're trying to say is the most segregated, because you have black church, you have Hispanic church, you have your Vietnamese, your Hmong church, your Baptist, your da. But they like to use it as particularly black-white.
Yeah.
That black people are, I've been going to churches, mega churches, little churches, Baptist churches, and I even went to this little Baptist church. Well, I told you about the one in Lubbock, Texas that my buddy and I accidentally walked into, where the mean age was probably 65.
Yeah.
That was the middle age, and all the way up to 100 people. Yeah. But and they were warm, they were welcoming. But the reason that church is separated and segregated is not because we have people with guns standing at the door. Hey, colored folks, you can't come in here. You know, or you Hispanics, you Asians, you can't come in here. We don't like your kind. No, never, not once. Not once did I ever experience that in my 50 years as a believer. Not once. What it is, it's cultural.
Yeah.
And not just nationally cultural.
Yeah.
Barry and myself like rock music. You actually don't have a problem with rock music, but you probably don't enjoy some of the stuff we enjoy.
Okay.
At the same time, we probably don't enjoy everything that you would enjoy.
Yeah.
Your wife, my wife, my wife and I don't agree on music. You know, we always argue about somebody,
Yeah, she's white, though. You're right.
Stop the flow.
I'm sorry.
We had a flow.
And he was on a roll
We
here.
had a flow, and now I'm just
Well, you're talking about division within the church.
division within the church.
And music is just one
Right,
small component of
exactly. But
those things that divide.
but think about it. It's as big as the racial divide. They're trying to make the big thing about the racial divide, and it's not about the racial divide. It's about a cultural divide that black folks have a certain way of worship that they like, whereas
Well, I think
your
it might
Baptist,
even-
your Church of Christ have theirs.
I think it might even be deeper and worse than, the kind of divide that you might have thinking about racially.
You're talking about the music divide.
I'm talking about theological. I think it's one thing, because I think I can think of people that might have said, well, I don't go to the same kind of church that a black person goes to, but I don't have any doubts about their salvation. I just don't like their style of music, or I don't like their style of preaching. But it's a different thing when you've got people that go, well, I can't go to that church because they're going to hell.
Yeah.
Because they are preaching a gospel that to me is detrimental to
And there's a
one's
lot of that
salvation.
today, isn't there? I mean, that's why every time I turn around, they're attacking Bethel, they're attacking Elevation Church, and
So
all
it's
these
not just
pastors.
a style I don't
Joel
like.
Osteen.
I think there's something wrong with their theology, and therefore they're hellbound, or they are
Right.
outside of the grace of God.
Again, the church, the Christian army, is finishing its own people off. We're
Well-
doing the devil's work instead of God's work. Let him be.
Yeah.
Let it be.
I think it goes back to Abe Lincoln's axiom. Instead of wondering if God's on our side, we should ask ourselves if we're on his side.
Yeah.
It's
And a lot of those people, though, to answer that, a lot of people do think they are on his side. That's why you had so much mess. Sometimes I sit back and shake my head, and I cannot understand, how did these people get this messed up in their thinking to believe that this is okay? Now, in retrospect, right? But back 50 years ago, it was perfectly all right in people's mind. Or let's go further, 60, 70 years ago. It was perfectly right to bar certain people from going into certain places, doing certain things. And I'm not just talking about racially. I'm talking about, you're from the poor side of town. You're not good enough. You're this or this or this. So, hey, everybody, I'm sorry, but we've got to take a break here. I apologize. I'm about to run over time here.
All right.
So we're going to go ahead and take a little break, and we will be back after these messages.
yeah.
Hey, by the way, while we take this break, I'm going to go ahead and speak about my book. It's called Y'all Have Sinned. And it is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll get it up on one of our websites.
I hope we do a good review of it, Eddie, you and me.
Yeah.
As a project.
So look for it. If you'll go to Fresh Black Coffee at gmail.com, freshblackcoffee@gmail.com, give us your address and everything. We'll keep you abreast of everything, okay? Anyway, in the meantime, we'll get back to the show.
Don't put it there.
And I've had us on mute anyway, and Dave almost destroyed the studio while we took the break.
Eddie just sits there during the break and lets me do all of it.
I have you on mute too, by the way. No, oh man, hey, let's just make sure, Barry. Go ahead and let's.
Jaggedy 1, 2, 3, 4,
That's fine.
8, 10,
You're
12.
good. You're good. You just have to trust me because I'm looking at the levels here. All right. So before we pause, for some reason, the theme this week, before we get into some current events and things like politically, socially, the theme so far seems to have been Christians, the church judging itself and devouring itself and hating itself, which is not Jesus's plan. It was not his plan to do that. You know what? I've been talking all this time and haven't been talking. I've been picking up on your mic, so I apologize. I'm not a techie, but no. The theme seems to have been us dealing with the church and what it does to itself.
And I tell you, having that missionary perspective, because you guys will go off into some other part of the globe, a different culture, and you come back and you see things that those of us have been here all these decades won't see. It's kind of like you come home from work and the first thing you smell is the garbage, and you say, honey, have you cared? What smell? I don't smell anything. Because you've been living it. Yeah,
you know, it gets also to what we've talked about before with PTSD. The life we lived in our YWAM time, that community, that bond, that closeness. I don't know if I've never found it with anybody. I've never bonded with anybody since coming back to it.
It's very akin to the military experience.
Bingo. Exactly. And I know of Christian kids, missionaries, and people that come back and they had that and they fall away because they don't have that. Because all of a sudden, you feel loved, you feel supported, you feel surrounded, you have like-mindedness, and all of a sudden you're back, and now I'm all by myself. And they don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle it. And it's a tough thing. And you can almost, like I said, it's akin to PTSD. But I like to call it separation anxiety because you're separated from that, I don't know, it's a oneness. It's just the weirdest thing that you know, for example, what was your background when you, church-wise, when you went to YWAM?
You're talking about
Baptist,
denomination?
yeah,
It was a non-denominational.
Okay, and so we had Catholics, we had Pentecostals, we had Baptists, you name it, Church of Christ.
Former Muslim.
You had all these people. It never came up. Like, I just had to ask you because I still don't. I never knew what your background was. And yet you put all these people together, you work together for years, and you'll never know. And it just isn't an issue. It never comes up. And it doesn't, we don't care. We're just there for one reason, to preach Jesus to those who don't know him or need to know. And in that case, a lot of drug addicts, prostitutes that we remember Yopi, and we had this prostitute with a few different ones we brought through trying to rehabilitate, and we had these drug addicts, some failures, some success. But it's just, for some reason, when you go back into the local community, it's just not there. We've been back 30 years. 30 years.
But I think in a certain, depending on the kind of community, and this was certainly the case for us with Youth with a Mission, and you'd have this probably with you could have this with any ministry. When you're facing struggles together and you're celebrating victories together, it's that word together.
Yeah.
That we're experiencing it, and I think you easily can have that as expats living in a foreign country or foreign culture. Any group that feels that it's
because you push
within
together.
A foreign culture.
I remember in college, my junior year, I just broken up with my girlfriend, and I was trying to figure out what's going on in relationships, and so I took a marriage and family class, and there was a former Baptist pastor who had gotten kicked out of his church because he became charismatic, but he had his counselor's license, and so he was teaching. Basically a marriage and family, but for singles. And I remember he would go over all of the divisions to marriage. And he went through faith, race, culture, all these different aspects of what presents challenges. And so he spent like a week on difference of faith. Differences like Jew marrying a Catholic or a Baptist marrying a Pentecostal, and then he got to the interracial thing, and he spent like 5 minutes. He just threw it out there, and so I went to meet him because my mother was German, my dad was from Mississippi, Black Mississippi, and so I said, "Why did you mention this only for 5 minutes?" He said, "Because that's not really an issue." I said, "What?" And this was in 1969 or 70. No, it was about 72. I said, "What?" He said, "No." He said, the pressure that will come against you for an interracial marriage actually binds you more than tearing you apart. And I never thought about it. And I thought about it because I didn't have any girlfriend at the time. But anyway, but my parents, and I noticed that all of their friends, they were the same mixed couples. It was all these German or even Asian girls married to black guys. But they had this whole like sub community in the military. They were all lifers in the military, and they all had, and you go to the PX, and they're all sitting together. But it was that pressure, that constant dealing with this. We're a certain group that may be hated or maybe not. In fact, when we first moved to Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, my mother tells the story about the doorbell rang, and there was this note that said, "I hate your guts." And then my mother couldn't understand, being German. She had to ask, "What are guts?" I said, "Well, it's your intestines." And he says, "Why would somebody hate my intestines?"
Nice.
So it ended up being a funny thing.
Yeah.
And then he had to explain it. He figured, that kind. And then, but this is the kind of stuff. So those couples were driven together. And so when you're a YWAM community, you name the missions organization out there, and you're in a foreign land, particularly where your life is being threatened day and night. It tends to strengthen your bond and the bond between those with you. It strengthens. I remember when we first got to Uganda, and Vicky came, my wife came with, and she was pregnant with our last son. And Uganda coffee is pretty potent stuff. And so we, speaking of
That's
that,
right.
Around here, do you?
right back.
All these
I don't have
product
any-
tie-ins,
No.
product placement,
That's
product placement.
I didn't even think of that. Well, anyway, so we had drank. So that day earlier, we were being welcomed by the bishop and all these church people, and they're singing their Ugandan Christian songs. And all of a sudden, we started hearing fireworks. And I said, "Oh, fireworks." And then I thought, wait a minute. These people don't have money to buy food. Why would they have firecrackers? And I started noticing the choir members getting nervous. Well, I figured this was gunfire, and sure enough, and you heard these vehicles, and there was a shootout with these guerrillas and the Ugandan army about a half mile down this hill where we were having a shootout, and these choir people were getting ready to run. It set the tone for our time there, the reality of what's going on. So late that night, it was. It's dark. I mean, it gets dark. You don't have any electric lights. You don't have any lights if they're not done by cow dung or something. But so we're laying there in the dark, and I thought Vicky was asleep. I'm awake. All of a sudden I hear this, Eddie. I say, "Yeah, I'm scared." I'm scared. And I want to say, "It's okay, honey. I'm here." And I say, "Yeah, me too." That was nice. Yeah, me too. I was just, but and it hit the truth hit me about, and you've heard this many times about heroics, that heroes aren't people that aren't afraid. It's just people that do what they need to do in spite of their fear.
Yeah, that's right.
And so it was like I had because at first I thought, what about Jim Elliot and those missionaries got killed there in South America? They must have been superhuman. Then I started reading the diaries. There's a book out with their last days there, and just speaking about how they were having malaria and they were scared, and and I'm thinking, well, it's the same stuff that I'm going through over here, you know. And then it hit me. They didn't become martyrs because they weren't afraid. They became martyrs that they faced their fear, and in spite of that fear, they still did what they felt God calling them to do. And that's a true martyr and a true hero, not somebody that doesn't have any fear. All right, guys, man, I think it's been really good. I mean, we've dealt with stuff that you would not normally get. But let's get closer to some political stuff. Joe Biden this week, I have to deal with this one. Joe Biden this week had that speech. It was a speech that's so bad that even the Washington Post and many liberal rags have attacked.
Yeah.
They said it's just...
Oh, yeah.
But the funny thing, and I don't know if you read my Facebook post after it, about in his speech, he was angry. First of all, he was angry. And he was talking about the voting rights bills that they're trying to get passed that aren't being passed. They're trying to throw out all of these statewide election reform measures. And so just like when Joe Biden says, you know, you have to decide if you're black or not, and if you didn't vote for me, you ain't black.
Yeah.
If you vote for
classic racism.
Donald Trump over me, you ain't black. And so this week he says, if you are against this thing, you have to decide if you're on the side of Abe Lincoln or Jefferson Davis, Bull Connor or Martin Luther King, George Wallace, and he had all these.
Those are all Democrats.
Hello, bingo, exactly. That's what nobody wants to say that.
That's right.
But that's what they know. That every person, every racist example he was trying to use was a Democrat.
Yes.
It was a Democrat.
And the other one was a Republican. Martin Luther King Jr. was a Republican.
Exactly, he was right, and he didn't even realize that. Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. And so it's just hilarious that every bad negative example he used, if you're going to decide, are you with Abe Lincoln, Martin Luther King, it was all Republicans, and everybody that you should be against was a Democrat.
Yeah.
And this one shows the immaturity of his staff. And probably they probably got an American education.
Yeah. And
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes. Made worse by groupthink.
Yes, but some young punk speechwriter wrote the speech and doesn't know their history.
Yep.
Doesn't realize that all you did is, and it's, if you ever watch, you notice how the Democrats in Congress and Senate, none of them brought that up. They all cried, and the ones that did, even what's his name from Illinois, one of the senators, I can't think of his. Even he came out and said it was a poor speech. It wasn't good. So when you got the Democrats attacking their guy, you know it's bad. You know something is up. So so that's one of the big things that occurred this week. That whole speech he made, and they're trying to. And it looks like we're going to escape without a reform bill. And also, what else happened?
Well, you staying on the Biden thing, it looks like they're getting rid of the old Senate rules, the filibuster rule. They failed that by at least 2 votes.
Right.
I mean, the president couldn't have had a worse week.
His approval rating
but next week's coming
to 33%.
In fact, Babylon Bee, another headline I didn't quote, was for the first time in history, the inflation rate is higher than the president's approval rate.
Oh, that's good.
So, yeah, but you remember, and I can't go into it now, Malcolm X warned us against the white liberal. He says the black man's worst enemy is the white liberal.
Yeah.
And so you got that. Now, last week, Ted Cruz, and you and I, we've had our battles over Trump versus Cruz, but I'm going to call him out. He had his worst and most unacceptable week last week. Now, this week that's just ending, probably his best week.
Yeah, he's come back. He's come back.
And I've got to call him out on it. In fact, 17 times from the Senate floor, he called the demonstrations at the Capitol January 6th. No, he called it terrorism.
Oh.
And there was this big outrage against him. And then he goes on Tucker Carlson and he tries to convince Tucker Carlson. He says, well, because my definition of terrorism is when you defy the police or attack cops. They're going, and I'm like, here you are, top of your class at Harvard Law School, national debate champion, and you don't even know the real definition of terrorism.
He knew the reason. And,
he was lying. Lying, Ted. There, I said it.
Lying, Ted. Okay, Donald, calm down. No, but it's funny because Tucker wasn't buying it. Tucker would not let him off the hook.
Right.
I mean, he attacked, and you could see Cruz was trying to get himself together. You could tell it was this isn't working. What else? What else have I got? Give me something else. He was probably hoping he'd have a little earpiece where somebody said, "All right, Mr. Cruz, just tell him this."
Yes,
and it wasn't happening. It wasn't coming.
The classic definition of terrorism is to strike terror, most notably done by attacking an unsuspecting civilian population. Bombs, right?
Yeah.
Crashing planes into skyscrapers, things like that. Not going after the uniformed law enforcement or military. So, and that's why terrorism is called cowardice, because you're going after the unsuspecting, the innocent people. They weren't the ones creating national policy, right? So he's trying to call this what happened when a very small segment decided that they were going to do something stupid at the Capitol.
Yeah.
And
and it's becoming more and more clear that it was set up.
Oh, yes.
Those unindicted co-conspirators.
That's what made this his best week ever. Because in the Senate hearings, he held the FBI to account. Who's Ray Epps? Did he literally?
I'm sorry, sir, I can't say that.
Right. Did the FBI?
I'm sorry, sir, I can't answer that.
Exactly. Over and over again.
Over and over
They
again.
won't go on the record.
No, you're right. You're right.
And I'm telling you, Ted Cruz, what he did this week is a game changer on this whole narrative of January 6th.
Well, we hope so. That would be great. You talk about making, as a friend of mine used to say, a purse out of a sow's ear. That would be a way to do it.
Can I say one more thing on that before you go? That's why you don't. That's why you don't give up on these politicians and write them off. Your biggest enemy in lawmaker this week might be your champion next week, and Ted Cruz just demonstrated that.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah.
No, it was good. I heard all of his stuff both ways. I want to do my annual Martin Luther King Jr.
Good.
Yeah, okay. Now, if you want to know more about it, why I take these positions, you can read about it right here in Y'all Have Sinned.
Where can I get that book, Eddie?
You get Amazon, Barnes and Noble,
Fresh Black Donkey.
Fresh Black Donkey.
Freshblack.coffee.
Yeah, freshblack.coffee.
Donkey.
Put down the donkey and pick up the coffee. No,
Donkey has layers.
But no, I just want to say that this has actual supporting evidence and everything. Monday is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It's Martin Luther King's birthday, and it's a national holiday.
Yep.
Everything's closed. It's become a federal holiday. I first began to question Martin Luther King Jr. in seminary. I have a friend, black friend, who wrote a paper. And in this paper, he did a debate between Jesus, Martin Luther King Jr., Jesse Jackson, and one other person. I can't remember who the third person was. But there were three people, but it was Jesus against these guys. What they said, what Jesus said.
Yeah.
Powerful. And so that's the first time. What? Martin Luther King, how dare you? You know, he said that. So I remember always keeping that in mind. So I went to, I was in Uganda, and my first trip, and I was trying to put together a teaching for these pastors there, the Church of Uganda, which is Anglican or Episcopalian. So I go to the library, and I wanted to do this seminar on discipleship. And as I started looking through, I said, okay, let's first define disciple. And it says a disciple is a follower, a student, a pupil, a devotee of a greater person, a teacher, etc. For example, here's the example. Martin Luther King Jr., a disciple of Mahatma Gandhi. So, what? Wait. Who? Not Jesus, not some bishop or, it was Gandhi was his mentor. He was a disciple of Gandhi. And I looked at this and I said, you got to be kidding me. So I started doing this whole search, and through my research, I found that essentially Martin Luther King Jr. was never a disciple of Jesus Christ. I know that's going to shatter some. Now, don't get me wrong. He was a great civil rights leader, okay, great civil rights leader, but it was purely a secular thing. For example, when he was assassinated, do you know what he was actually doing in Memphis when he was assassinated?
Not sure.
He was supporting a labor strike, the garbage men in Memphis, Tennessee. He had become a very outspoken labor activist and anti-war activist. Sure. He turned again. He was almost kicked to the curb by the black community back in from about 63 to 66 by people like an emerging black more militant group, Malcolm X, A-Trap Brown, Stokely Carmichael. I remember my dad, one day I came home, Martin Luther King. He said, they're done with him. They're attacking him. He's yesterday. I said, what? Yeah, A-Trap Brown, Stokely Carmichael. They don't like Martin Luther King Jr. I said, wow. And they were calling him an Uncle Tom, a sellout, and et cetera, et cetera. And Malcolm X, in particular, really came out against him. They were very much enemies. All that's been buried. Martin Luther King Jr. became a hero to the masses in America. The reason we have Martin Luther King Day, the reason we have Martin Luther King statue there in D.C. is not about civil rights. It's been covered over and made to look that way. The real reason we have a Martin Luther King Jr. Day is because he fully adopted the weapons, the ideology, everything of the liberal left. I know that you have people like Sean Hannity and others who like to say if Martin Luther King were alive today, he'd be a conservative, he'd be a Republican, he'd be this. Nope. He is the father of Jesse Jackson, of Al Sharpton. He is the father of Stacey Abrams, of Barack Obama. All of these people. Martin Luther King Jr. was not about being a Christian pastor. He adopted Christian ideology, Christian verbiage, philosophy, things like that, to make his point. And that's something that people need to really understand. Now, I'm not making this up. If you get this book in there are the references, his own writings, his own papers, his own papers. And if you don't want to give up the money, go to Stanford University Press, and that's where they have his papers, and it will explain that Martin Luther King, why I say Martin Luther King is not a believer in Jesus Christ. He believes Jesus lived. He doesn't believe, well, first of all, he doesn't believe in a virgin birth, a resurrection, or a second coming. There's not much left that makes you a Christian after that.
I think the politicizing of a church organization is one of the things I see him doing. Isn't it the National Baptist
That's the Black Baptist.
Yeah, and that turning it into a political platform, because we saw, now, keep in mind, the basic argument of civil rights, I consider as a Christian principle. We all
Sure.
understand
Of course.
and as that, and I think there's a lot of us that, as a young kid, I remember identifying with, yes, as a Christian, I need to identify with that.
Let me ask you a question. What is it that Martin Luther King Jr. did to further civil rights?
I'm hardly the person to answer that.
Find me the person.
Yeah.
Find me the person. They're
Well,
I mean, the answer
I have
is
to say his great speech on the Washington Mall was an incredible oration, great principles.
right, but it
Pencil
didn't do any good.
If you at least establish as a manifesto, this is where we're going, I think it unifies the movement towards a specific listed set of ends.
Now he didn't write that speech.
Okay, that's fine, but he gave the speech.
He gave the speech.
Do you
Do you know
know
why
who
he
wrote
gave
it?
the speech? Do you know why he gave the speech? Because the person who wrote it was a homosexual.
Okay.
And I'm not saying this to attack homosexual. I'm just saying because back in 1963, a homosexual could never give that. He couldn't give a speech, period, or they'd be stoning him instead of praising him, right? So what they did, they found Martin Luther King Jr. and made him the front man for that speech on the March on Washington. He didn't even organize the March on Washington. That wasn't even him. So as I said, you got to read about it. You got to know the full truth.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying Martin Luther King was not a great civil rights leader. Okay, his prestige, his person did help with the civil rights. But to me, I would give as much credit to H. Rap Brown, Stokely Carmichael, Malcolm X. And the reason I say that is because these people were, and it's basically the liberal manifesto, is the liberal method of operation. You push, you attack to the point where they want to compromise. And so because you had these black radicals and you had the other white radicals joining with them, pushing it to a certain point, the establishment needed to find somebody that they could compromise on that. Okay, we'll give them this. That way we don't have to deal with this. And that's why they had to lift Martin Luther King Jr. up. And otherwise you were going to have more and more of these H. Rap Browns and Stokely Carmichaels and people rising. And these were going to become the voice of the black community versus Martin Luther King. So they chose him to prop up. Now, he was a great orator. I even thought years ago, this is before I even came across any of this information, how Martin Luther King Jr. could have been a greater preacher than Billy Graham. He could have had a greater reach than... And some people would say, oh, he did. But no, he really didn't. Because Billy Graham, his audiences, every night were 30 to 40,000 people, right, in the big stadiums and everything. Whereas Martin Luther King had the one March on Washington, that big, that he never organized.
Right.
And it wasn't even a Martin Luther King thing you were coming to. You were coming to a national civil rights.
He was just one component.
He was one component. So, but I've always thought he could have had a ministry greater than Billy Graham. Much greater. The impact he could have had if he had truly preached the gospel and stuck with that. But instead, he chose.
So you're leveling a lot here.
Yeah, I'm throwing a lot out for you. But
It's called black privilege. He's allowed to do that.
Well, I just have one. It brings one question to my mind, and that is, what do you believe that Martin Luther King, what his goals were?
His goals were the same as most of your secularized black folks, and that is civil rights for black people. So on the civil rights end, he was right. I wasn't disagreeing with him on that. And even on the labor thing, he might have been right. Maybe the garbage men in Memphis weren't getting enough money or whatever. I'm not disagreeing with any of that. But people that have tried to use the fact that he was Reverend Martin Luther King, he was a spiritual man, he was this minister, that is where, nope, we got to stop. That's what I'm saying.
Reverend Jesse Jackson is an oxymoron.
The Reverend Al Sharpton.
It's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Getting back to the topic on divisions, within the church.
Yeah, but see, name me the church that Martin Luther King Jr. pastored, or where he worked, or
in Atlanta?
He was always it was his father's church.
Okay,
but he always worked in the secular realm, and he went to a very liberal Union theological seminary, which is very ultra liberal.
Sure,
and that's where he was introduced to God. You can go on YouTube and look up Martin Luther King Jr. on Gandhi, and the guy, it's Face the Nation or Meet the Press.
Yeah,
Dr. King, when did you come to Gandhi? Instead, like you say, Barry, when did you come to Jesus? They literally says, when did you come to God? I came to Gandhi on blah 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 blah. And he actually made a trip. He went to visit Gandhi in India, him and his wife, and he was so touched and moved by Gandhi more than Jesus. And so my whole point is this, okay? And I better wrap it up because we're running out of space here. If you want to elevate Martin Luther King Jr. as a minister of the gospel, don't do it. If you want to elevate him as a civil rights worker, as a union spokesman, a great orator, any of these things, do it. But don't conflate it with him being this great minister, this spiritual Christian man. That's all I'm trying to say. Yeah. And that's what I want to have people keep their perspective on, that when we celebrate this holiday, why are we celebrating the holiday? And ask the questions, what really did Martin Luther King do for the civil rights movement? And I would say very little, very little.
All right.
We're going to take another break here, and then when we get back, we'll wrap this whole thing up.
I'm Jeff Davis with Just a Thought. From the world hindquarters of dubious information, it's Fake News Friday. The sassy picture of the late Betty White flipping the bird was photoshopped. Funny, but fake. Police arrested 2 men in St. George, Utah with $20,000 in fake money. They're going to use it to make a rap music video. And some would argue that rap is fake music. A 76-year-old man was arrested in Nigeria for bringing fake cookies and candy into the country from Canada. Fake because they were actually marijuana edibles. Reminder, Valentine's Day is 1 month from today. There was a fake report that Aaron Rodgers said he would boycott the Super Bowl over COVID-19 rules if Green Bay made it that far. Scammers are selling fake forever stamps, which means it may take forever for your mail to make it wherever you send it with those stamps. It's bad enough Communist China copies our military secrets, but a fake shipment of 50,000 fake Apple AirPods and 920 bogus Nintendo games were confiscated at the port of Houston. A couple in Mumbai, India arrested for a fake auction selling prominent Muslim women. Just a thought. I'm Jeff Davis.
All right, we're back. We took a little long on that break than I thought, but Dave will fill in with his commercials or something.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave. So Monday, you're saying there is an additional holiday in Oklahoma,
Absolutely.
a special Oklahoma holiday, which happens to coincide with Martin Luther King Day.
Absolutely.
And what is that?
The third Monday of January in 1867, almost 2 years after the Civil War ended, finally in Oklahoma, the Indian tribes completely gave up black slaves.
Wow.
And it was the Osage tribe. They signed it on the third Monday in January. Happened to be the 21st, that year. And they said, okay. And it was part of the Reconstruction treaties after the Civil War. You see, emancipation and the 13th Amendment applied to the states, didn't apply to the territories. And Indian Territory, where the tribes got to live autonomously under their own government. So, and that's why in the 14th Amendment, it talks about our rights. He says, those in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. That doesn't include the Indian tribes.
Or illegal aliens.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Another point. So anyway, in fact, to that end, I've worked with one of the legislators to propose a bill, a resolution to name the third Monday in January every year in Oklahoma as Freedman Day.
Wow.
I hope they get to it.
I hope they do too, because that's important. That's another unsung or an untold story there that nobody knows about.
Juneteenth is nothing.
No.
But Freedman Day is something, especially in Oklahoma.
Yeah, and here's what's interesting about that whole deal too, Dave. That is, the way this whole thing works, you remember 2 acres and a mule was the deal.
40.
40
I mean,
acres of mule.
Yeah.
2 acres.
And that's what the
Don't
Chickasaw tribe
I think I'm
20, 30
conflating
more.
it with two mules for Sister Sarah.
Yeah, the dowry.
Yeah,
Put the mule down.
put the donkey down. 40 acres and a mule.
Yeah.
So when I first became aware of this type of thing, it was T.W. Shannon.
Yes.
A former speaker of the Oklahoma legislature.
Chickasaw tribal member.
Chickasaw. And his family were freedmen, and apparently the Chickasaw, what they did, they gave the 40 acres and the mule to their slaves and set them free, but
Instead
they took them off
of
the roll.
citizenship. Yes.
Right. Whereas the other ones, the Cherokee and a few others, kept them on the roll. And then until now, a couple of years ago, they want to kick them off the roll
Yeah, that's
now.
right.
Yeah. And I remember being on KFAQ and this guy calling in, saying, well, we have a right to kick them off. I said, yeah, I think you do too. Then America has a right to abandon our treaty with the natives, and we start getting, you start paying us taxes
How
for
dare you?
Oh, the guy got so mad. He didn't want to hear that. Oh, okay, we're going to ban this treaty. We got to get rid of the whole treaty, and you have as much more to lose than you have by keeping these. Because I don't know if you know this, but these freedmen, the freed slaves, they made them tribal members, so they had all the rights of the tribes. Well, all of a sudden, it's probably been 5 or 6 years ago now.
10 years.
Cherokee has been that long.
Yeah.
The Cherokee decided they want to kick the black people off their rolls, so they didn't have to share their casino money and all the
They became
mineral rights.
Indian givers. That is accurate, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Why?
Because Indian giver is backwards.
Somebody who gives something and then comes and takes it back away.
Yeah, that's the interpretation.
And that's what the Cherokees did with citizenship for the black folk.
I get,
They
okay.
gave it to
I'll
him
give
and
you
then
that
took
one.
it back
I'll give
away.
you that one. I'm gonna go ponder it.
Your Honor,
There's
rest
some
my
reason
case.
that the whole Manhattan thing just didn't, it just didn't jive or something. But
in this
I
case,
think my
it is.
brain is working too hard here.
Okay.
I'm back to the $26 that we paid for Manhattan, or your people paid for Manhattan, especially your people, the Dutch.
Yes.
It was the Dutch. Oh, you're Flemish, you're Belgian.
Yeah, close enough.
Close enough. Your cousins.
Yeah.
Your cousins a little further north. But yeah, that whole Freedman thing. So I'm totally in favor of that. I'm totally in favor of Freedman Day in Oklahoma, and I don't think you would get much of an argument.
Well, and we tried to get it passed last year. We were
And who
awfully
fought it?
late. Well, it was just
Oh, it was just
awfully
too
late. And I was trying, and I'm working with specific legislators. I said, let's stop that narrative of Juneteenth because that's such a joke. And what did federal Congress do?
That's over. Yeah. We need to
we
move
lost
beyond
it.
that. But I think we should still consider doing.
We
Freedman
still
Day.
should.
Freedman
Yes.
Day would be a good one. Yeah. So what else is going on? Let's see. What's coming up? Legislatively?
Oh, I tell you, the bills that are being filed, there's some ridiculous stuff going out there. Sooner Politics has a legislative update. They can go there and look at them. Too numerous, because you're going to give it 2,000 bills, and so there's always ridiculous stuff. Let's see. Oh gosh, the gun rights people are after Senator Paxton. Senator Paxton didn't like what OK2A said when they said, we win at the ballot box, so we don't go to the ammo box. And one senator said, that statement, your commitment to nonviolence was too violent. Not supposed to mention the ammo box. And so this just happened yesterday, and it made the news, and now Senator Paxton's in big trouble with the gun rights people, which is a very growing bunch. So,
Well, it was a stupid statement.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
was a stupid statement.
Well, the guy's trying to encourage these people, hey, stay engaged, stay political. We are winning at the Capitol. And he's saying, he's trying to encourage because there are all kinds.
But why even bring up guns?
It's called OK2A. They are a Second Amendment organization.
I understand, but what was his context for bringing them up into a discussion about we're winning? So, in other words, if we're winning at the ballot box, if we're winning in legislative action,
My understanding,
then why
it
would
was
you
a
even-
civic event down in Duncan, Oklahoma, where he's asked to come in speaking just about Second Amendment right policies in Oklahoma. He was specifically asked, and he was the executive director. That's what his job is to talk about.
But at the same, again, what I keep trying to get to is why bring up the gun box, the ammo box? It was not necessary. I would say, we have legislation that is good legislation in Oklahoma.
I don't think he has to limit himself to what you think is necessary, Eddie.
I do.
Well, that's okay. You're free to say that.
I'm just kidding. No, but seriously, no, he is free to say whatever he wants.
Yeah.
I'm just calling out stupidity. Did he need to say it? He could have saved himself all kinds of grief by not saying we don't win with the ammo box. I mean,
I understand.
That's inflammatory
You know what?
language.
Jefferson Davis shouldn't have talked about the blood of patriots and tyrants either, but he did.
Now Jefferson Davis is totally
I'm sorry,
unnecessary.
Thomas Jefferson. Sorry,
But see, yeah, see,
screwed that up.
Yeah. Now you're going to be in hot water.
Yeah.
But no, seriously though, that was a different time. That was a different time, different era. We were fighting for independence against Britain, a whole nation. Okay, now what we're talking about in Oklahoma City, speaking to a gun rights organization, use wisdom, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves, not wise as doves and harmless as serpents. What he did, he just invited snakes to bite him, and he could have avoided it by not even bring that, just leave out the ammo box. All he had to do is say, people, I'm with you and we're winning. Our legislation practices and policies are working. Thank you. We need you. End of story. And he can, by the way, if you're out there, and it's shut off again, if you're out there, you're welcome to hire me to be your communications.
I don't expect OK2A is going to be calling on you, Eddie.
No. I wasn't talking about OK2A. I'm talking about the center.
But I mean, okay, don't ever mention pitchforks. Don't ever mention clubs. Don't ever mention.
Not if you don't need to.
He's trying to say, look, we don't go there because this is how, in a civilized society, we handle things. In the legislature and at the ballot box.
That would be like me doing a speech on COVID and saying that we're doing great fighting gonorrhea.
Okay. Or
no, I mean,
Eddie, no.
Gonorrhea has nothing to do with COVID.
Okay.
But I'm going to throw it out there that we don't need gonorrhea. We don't need any gonorrhea medicine because we're doing great with COVID.
Right.
Or we're not doing great with COVID, but we're doing. I mean, it's a terrible example, I know. But I'm just saying that's what this reminds me of. To me, it's a foolish act. It's like me going to a GOP thing and telling people, if you really want to do right, you should vote Democrat.
I think you're just flat wrong, Eddie. Because I think
that's what makes this so wonderful that you and I disagree.
The Apostle Paul says, husbands, love your wives. Right. Don't beat your wives. Now, you see, you shouldn't have said beat your wives.
Wait a minute.
I just said don't beat your wives.
Wait a minute. We're now you're adding to Scripture. It doesn't say that anywhere in the Bible.
I didn't say it was Scripture. I said it was what I said.
Okay. And that's what I'm saying, what he did.
Right.
That's what this guy did. He threw something in there like beat your wife. Don't beat your wives when he threw in the ammo box.
How in the world
You're making my case for me,
How
Dave.
in the world is don't go to your ammo box saying go to your ammo box? He's saying don't.
All right, close your eyes a second and don't think about a red monkey.
Okay.
Okay, what are you thinking about?
Eddie Huff.
No, you're not. You're thinking about a red monkey. I promise you. So that's what, as soon as what, are you calling me a red monkey?
No.
You got the red.
I was obeying your command not to think about that, so I said, okay,
charges.
You don't defeat something with nothing, so I replaced it with Eddie Huff.
You called me a red monkey.
No, I didn't.
I asked you, I mentioned a red monkey and asked you what you're thinking about, and you said Eddie Huff. So
No.
what am I to think?
No.
We've got an impartial witness.
Here's the deal, folks, is when they say don't do this, you got to replace it with something. So instead of visualizing what he was suggesting, I visualize something else. That's the easiest way to defeat that.
Yeah, but you're counting on people out there in the audience having the same acumen to be able to think of something else instead.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I'm saying?
I just say what works for me.
I know. Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. It's all about you. You red monkey. You.
You said selfishness
You're
isn't
more of
bad.
a red monkey than me. Look at him. He's turned all red. He's turned red. He's wearing red.
You said selfishness
Now, if
is
you
not
said a
necessarily a
black
bad
monkey
thing.
or a brown monkey, then you'd be closer.
You're trying awfully hard, Eddie.
I can see this show has totally devolved.
All right.
Devolved into something. Barry, bring us out of this. Save us. Deliver us. What have you got to say? No. Okay. Tell us real quick. I think you guys are on a trip because your wife works for Arizona State University.
That's correct.
And you guys went out there to a meeting out there. Although it's kind of interesting. You live in Tennessee. She got the job while she was in Florida, but it's a job working for the University of Arizona State University.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's funny how stuff works like that. But, so her big thing is education. She's involved in education. And what exactly is it? Her position?
Director of Strategic Communications.
Ooh, strategic communication.
Not just any kind of
Yeah,
communication.
not tactical. It's strategic.
Exactly.
Long
And not
term.
misleading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or disinformation.
Yeah. So we could actually use Kay in here to help us with our communication.
Hey.
Because apparently you and I have got a failure
Yeah.
to communicate. You red monkey, you.
Hey,
Hey, by the way, by me calling you a red monkey, that gets you out of hock.
okay.
I mean, I'm doing that as a favor to you, not as
Thank
a favor
you.
to me. Yeah,
Thank you.
Always thank you.
Hey, listen, ASU is a great resume thing because they are innovators in online education.
Except in the Kyle Rittenhouse case.
Well, yeah. There's a lot of whining, but I'm just saying ASU's got some developing for web-based education principles. I mean, my goodness, what innovators. It's good to see a state school really stepping up like Arizona State, you know, which they hadn't fired my friend Todd Graham, their football coach, but you know,
Excuse me.
that's life.
Oh, you're a Todd Graham fan?
Well, he's a friend. I mean, he and his
well,
wife
yeah.
were clients of mine for a long
I
time.
mean, he's not a very liked guy in this town.
You
After
know.
what he did to the University of Tulsa.
Oh, when you leave, you know, they all gonna moan, you know, but.
You know, actually, that's true. In fact, now that you mention it, the TU fans, the TU people were not as bad about him leaving as the OU fans have been
Yeah.
about their coach leaving.
Yeah, it's the business side of things.
It
you
is.
know?
It really is. I had to deal with that. But I will say this, and we'll wrap it up with this, okay? I think we talked about this, about Tim Gill and
Yeah.
Rocky.
Kelmus?
No,
not
Rocky
Kelmus.
he played at
Rocky.
OU. He was a
Oh,
football player.
yeah.
What is it? I cannot think of this other kid.
Yeah, Rocky, the OU basketball player.
Yeah.
That Rocky. I forget.
Anyway, they
Yeah.
they wanted to leave and,
Go to Arkansas.
one of them, Tim, and the
Tim.
other one went to Southern Illinois or something.
Yeah.
But the media just savaged these kids.
Yeah.
Talked about they were unfaithful and they
Yeah.
just bad, beat them
Yeah.
up. And so Nolan Richardson basically convinced them, go back because they'll
Yeah.
kill you, you won't get it. So they recanted, they came back.
Groveled.
They came back
Had
to
to
the school.
apologize.
And then 2 weeks later, the coach
Bill
decides
Self.
to leave. Bill Self decides to go to the University of
Yeah,
Tulsa.
didn't just leave.
Oh.
He went to the arch rival across town.
Oh, happy day, and everything's wonderful. ORU got $1 million buyout or multi-million-dollar buyout. He got a big contract and everything. And these kids now were stuck in the same school without that coach, who was a great coach. And so I wrote an op-ed to the Tulsa One. They actually printed it, and I put the student athlete, the last slave class in America.
Sure.
Because they have no rights, basically. Yeah. And the media was beating them mercilessly.
Yep.
And then that same media turned around and was just praising the coach that did exactly the same
Sure.
thing 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
It was, I'll never
And-
forget that as long as I
And I
live.
can tell you what Todd told me privately. I remember standing in his garage talking to him. He says, I said, well, there's a lot of opportunities. Are you going to take one? He said, he said, I was offered the Auburn job and I turned it down. And so they said, can we talk to your offensive coordinator, Gus Malzahn? Gus took it. And within a couple of years, got a national championship.
Yeah.
And that ate at Todd. That
Well, then
really
why
ate
did
at
Todd turn it down? He turned the job. Malzahn left while Todd was still at TU.
Yeah,
So
Todd said, I'm not going to
stayed.
take it. Gus, they're willing to talk to you. Gus took it. He went and got a national championship.
goodness.
Yes, with Camden,
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Cam Newton.
yeah, Cam Newton. And so, then, as we were talking about, Pitt had hired this guy and then he gets arrested for beating his wife. And now all of a sudden they fire him at Pitt. And it's like, what do you, and Todd says to me, he says, they'd have to pay me $2 million to take that. And he says, signing day comes up, or commitment day, in 10 days. And sure enough, they flew him out there, offered him $2 million. He took it. And the only thing is, what worked here did not work. It's a whole different culture
Yeah,
up
it is
there.
over the East Coast.
And it was 1 year. And I knew his Penny's folks are from Phoenix, and they wanted him. And she said, gosh, it'd be great to be able to be with my family. Because his parents would come in just to have time babysitting their grandson, Mike. He was 10 years old, And so, yeah. And Todd took his lumps because he left Pitt after 1 year. And he said, I did this one for my wife. She's traveled with me everywhere I went. And now I'm taking this. And he had a good run. It was Pac-12. And eventually, he had a couple of bad years.
Where's he now?
Hawaii.
Oh,
He's
that's
the head
right.
coach
He's
of
in
Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Yep. Rough life.
He'll be back. I mean,
Yeah.
he was young enough. So, all right, everybody. Well, that's going to do it for another week. Barry, thank you for sitting in with us, listening to us.
I had to keep this chair warm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we you get to see what we do every week, and but seriously, people, we really do want to wish everybody a happy week and a wonderful Freedman Day. I'm going to start calling it Freedman Day on Monday.
That's right.
And no, but seriously, if you want to get in touch with us, go to freshblack.coffee, freshblack.coffee. That's where you have the video at freshblackcoffee.podbean.com, podbean.com, freshblackcoffee.podbean.com has us, and Facebook. And so we're all over the place.
Yeah. And if you get his book as a bonus, you get to find out what a Judas goat is. Judas goat.
What is the Judas goat?
I asked the author. It's one of your chapters.
Just go down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, thank you, everyone.
All right.
And we will, Lord willing, talk to you next week. Okay. God bless. Bye. Let me make sure I get the right.